still have some ideas, you want to make submissions, at least the next couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks' time. Then maybe you may go back to your individual school. Now, with the budget consultations, apart from hearing what you have to say, what your views are, if you have any questions, we actually have a short presentation for you to be able to understand what are the things we look at when we actually formulate the budget. And for you to be able to also understand that the budget is actually what we call a balancing act. Everybody has different aspirations. I'm sure everybody in Navosa and around Singatoka, up in Olo Road here, everybody wants to tahsil road. If we were to tahsil all the roads in Fiji, there won't be any money left for other sectors. Maybe we won't be able to give free education. It's all about balancing it. It's also, from government's perspective, all about ensuring that we are able to inject money into the economy that will help economy grow also. So why are we giving, for example, free education? Because we want all of you to be able to have at least Form 7 qualifications. We want all of you, in fact, to go further than that, to either get a university education or technical education, technical college education. So these are the things that we sort of strategically we place money and invest in. Today in Fiji, 69.4% of the entire population is below the age of 40. So all of you are in the majority. Most of your teachers are in the minority. Right? So the young people in Fiji constitute 69.4% of the population. It has enormous challenges, but also enormous opportunities. So as a government, we need to think about, if all of you are now, for example, if most people are about 20 years old, in 30, 40 years' time, the bulk of the population will be much older. If 69 or nearly 70% is below the age of 40, in about 30 years' time, all those people will become older. So how do we change our health system? What will be their requirements? Do we have more pension schemes for elderly people? Because at the moment we have less elderly people than younger people. So these are the kind of things we need to think about. Now, the way this process works is that we have consultations with you. The Permanent Secretary in a couple of weeks' time will sit across the table with the Permanent Secretaries from the other ministries and go through the budget with them, what their priorities are. A few weeks after that, then I sit with her, with the other ministers across the table, and we finalize their budgets. And then I present the budget. As you would have seen, I stand up in Parliament and I speak for about 2 hours and present the budget. Last year we started doing it at night time. So last year I think we started about 7 p.m. So the reason why we're doing it at night time, so more of you can watch it at home on television or listen to it on radio. If you did it during the day, you probably won't be able to listen to it because you're in school. So once we present the budget, we then are able to, then we have to by law leave 1 week. And then a week after that, at least a week after that, then we debate the budget in Parliament. And as you see, the opposition and the government people all sit around and we debate. So we may, for example, say, we had an allocation, for example, rebuilding of schools, Singatoka Methodist High School. We've allocated funds for that. So then they'll say, why are you allocating this much money? Where will the school be built? How much of that money will be spent? These are the kind of questions they ask. And then the budget gets passed. The budget, once it gets passed, the budget is applicable from the 1st of August. The new budget is applicable from 1st of August because our financial year now starts on the 1st of August and ends on the 31st of July the following year. This is why the budget is now called the 2016-2017 budget. What you get to consult on is the 2017-2018 budget. Now, when the night that I stand up and announce the budget, nothing is approved except one thing. If we increase the duty or tariffs on anything, then it becomes applicable from that night. So if I stand up on a Thursday night at 7 p.m. and say this is the budget, we'll debate this in 1 week's time, but we put up the duty on cigarettes and alcohol. And we're going to reduce the duty on maybe, certain things, watches, say for example. Then at midnight, soon as midnight strikes, the new duty rates become applicable. So that's what happens when you announce the budget. Even before the budget is passed, the tariff rates come into effect the next day. Now, some of the things we'll take you through today is things that you'll hear about, and we want you to understand what it is all about. The first slide will talk to you about economic growth. Now, this shows to you how fast the economy is growing every year. Is it growing? Is it decreasing? Generally, you'll find that whenever you have a cyclone or some sort of disruption, the economy will either contract, go into minus, or it will slow down. So you can see over here, this thing works? Oh. You can see over here when we had Cyclone Mick, I hope you can see that, it went down by 1.4%. All the other years, it's been growing, 3%, 2%, 1.4%. This is the first time in Fiji's history, or second time, sorry, that we've had 7 years straight growth rates. Now we'll go into an 8-year growth rate. It's unprecedented. It's never happened in Fiji before. What does it mean for you? When the economy is growing, it means there are more jobs being created. It means the economy is growing. So if more economy is growing, more businesses are growing. When a business grows, they need people to work for them. When economies grow, then people put up wages, or they require more skill sets. They require different skill sets. So that's why it's very important. So you'll hear speaking in the budget and say the economy is set to grow at 3.6% or 2%, whatever the case may be. As you can see with Cyclone Winston, the economic growth rate went down over here because of Cyclone Winston. Next one, please. Okay, what are the things that makes the economy grow? So we measure that. These measurements are done by the Reserve Bank of Fiji. I hope, can you all see this? And people on the other side, can you see the screen? Okay. So, in the agriculture contributes about 0.31% to that overall growth. It's quite large. But you can see fisheries is very small, 0.02. Forestry is even smaller, 0.01. Manufacturing in the industry sector is quite large. It's about 0.56. We make a lot of things in Fiji now. We make brooms, we make chairs, we make mattresses, we make furniture, lots of things. We make sewage pipes, we make water pipes, a lot of things. We make sweets, we make twisties, whatever the case, it's all manufacturing. Over here in the manufacturing is also the sugar, sugar production. Construction is quite large, 0.33. Construction, ladies and gentlemen, is also very important. If, for example, we were to build a new school here, a concrete building, say double story, if you build a school, you need somebody to come and dig the foundation. You need somebody to then put the steel. You need somebody to then pour the concrete. You need somebody to lay the bricks. You need somebody to plaster it. You need somebody to do the plumbing. You need somebody to do the electricity. You need somebody to put the roof. You need somebody to do the wiring. You need somebody to do the painting. You need somebody to do the windows. All the people who need to do these things will be paid money. So construction creates employment. And when people get paid, they have money in their pocket. When they have money in their pocket, they spend the money. They may go and buy a carton of beer. They may go and buy some shirts. They may buy a second-hand car. They may extend their house. So it generates, it moves the economy. When people have money in their pocket, it moves the economy. If, for example, a lot of people go to a shop and buy lots of things, the shopkeeper will say, oh, hang on, I'm getting a lot of people coming in. I can't handle everybody that's coming in. I need to hire 2 more shop assistants. So it creates jobs. And when everybody goes out and spends money, whenever you buy anything, you pay VAT. When you pay VAT, that money comes to us. When that money comes to us, we build a better school for you. We pay for your free education. We build better roads. So this is how the economy turns. Now, you have, of course, the financial sector has contributed, transport, wholesale, retail, accommodation, information, and communication. These are your mobile phones. I don't know how many of you know this, but you're probably too young, and the teachers will tell you this. Only about 9 years ago, excuse me, you had only one mobile phone company in Fiji, Vodafone. To make a phone call at a peak period was 99 cents a unit. Today it's about 23 cents a unit. You know how you people now have 5 up, 7 up? None of that used to happen. Text messaging was over 50 cents. Today, if you think if you pay more than 5 cents, it's very expensive. But we liberalized the economy. We said, let's have competition. As a result of that, the cost of you making phone calls has decreased. The cost of doing business has decreased. Your convenience has improved. So these are the kind of things that we are focused on. We're getting Vodafone and Digicel, and as government, we're putting in money to put more towers so people get better connectivity. There's still certain parts of Fiji where you don't have mobile phone connection. There's still certain parts of Fiji where you don't have internet. But there are more parts in Fiji now that actually has internet. So we are able to, as government, we have to strategize what are the things to do to unlock the potential for the Fijian people. Next one, please. So what are the things we look at to see if the economy is growing? So we look at the value of the building permits issued. From January to September 2016, it went up by 12.7%. This is, remember, this is after Winston too, so it was kind of slowed down. If you look at the figures now, it'd probably be a lot higher. You know, building permits means the people, when they go and apply, say, I want to put up a building. When people apply for that, that means there's going to be a lot of construction, there's confidence in the system. Value of work in place went up by 10.5%. Domestic cement sales went up by 11.1%. Obviously, you're not going to buy cement and keep it underneath your house. You buy cement to build. So that is an indicator that the economy is moving. Imports of investment goods, when we buy or businesses buy machinery and other equipment, they obviously are going to use it. In other words, more jobs will be created. Government capital expenditure, which is called CapEx, has increased also by 7.8%. These are the 3 areas where it decreased. Consumption indicators. You see this young lady, she's holding this pen. This pen is probably not made in Fiji. She's holding this camera. Oh, it's a camera case, but this is not made in Fiji. He's got the camera. The badge that she's wearing is probably engraved in Fiji, but the material on which it is engraved is not made in Fiji. The dress that she's wearing is probably sewn in Fiji, but the fabric comes from overseas. Right, so these are the things that we buy. Your bag, a lot of these bags aren't made in Fiji. We also buy food from overseas. So normally, what we look at is the import of consumption goods. If it's gone up, that means people are spending money. They feel confident. You go to Tapu's and buy a watch, that means people have more money. They want to go and buy some perfume. These things are all made overseas. So these are what we call the consumption goods. So that's gone up. PAYE collection. These are the taxes you pay. When you start working, your teachers pay PAYE. That's the taxes they pay. The taxes have gone up in collection, not the actual amount. The actual collection has gone up. Why? Because there are more people working now, so we're obviously collecting more taxes. The people's salaries go up. New job advertisements went up by 15.1%. The Reserve Bank of Fiji does all these figures. They normally look at the job advertisements in the Fiji Times. We've asked them to look at the Fiji Sun also, because, for example, government does not apply for job advertisements in the Fiji Times, we only do it in Fiji Sun. A lot of companies only do it in one paper, but not the other one. So this would probably be higher. Personal remittances went up by 5%. This is what, you know, your friends, family and relatives who are maybe living overseas, they send money back. We have a lot of rugby players who who play rugby overseas. They send money back. We have a lot of nurses who work overseas. We have security forces, personal security guards working in the Middle East and various other places. They send money back. When we measure that also, that went up by 5%. We also, even though VAT went down from 15% to 9%, we have collected more VAT Because people are spending more money. There's a lot of confidence in the economy, people are spending more money. And of course, younger people tend to spend more money than other people because they like to buy things. Today in Fiji, we have something like 450,000 smartphones in Fiji. Today in Fiji, there are more SIM cards in use than actual people in Fiji. Do you know that? So the population is about 890,000 people in Fiji. And we have more SIM cards than the actual number of people that's being used. Because you know, some of you I know have got 2 SIM cards. One for one girlfriend, one for the other girlfriend maybe, I'm not sure. Or boyfriend, whatever the case may be. Now the other thing, so just go back to the other slide. Now the other thing that I forgot to mention is the consumption indicators. The number of motor vehicle registration, new vehicles, went up by 27.5%. And the registration of second-hand vehicles went up by 7.8%. There are a lot more cars on the roads, you would have noticed now. A lot more people are buying cars because the economy is doing well, they have more money in their pocket, more banks are lending them money. And you know, a lot of people, for them to show that they're doing well, they like to buy a car. You know, my son's got a car now, he's doing well. Or my daughter's doing well, and she just bought a car. A lot of people think that if you move up the socio-economic ladder, you must buy a car. And of course, we reduced the duty on cars too. So just to show that to you, if you go up to the next slide, please. You see, just by comparison, in 2005, there were 6,088 second-hand vehicles registered in Media and 3,363 new vehicles. By comparison, look at last year, there were 10,000 new second-hand cars on the road. And there were 4,900, nearly 5,000 vehicles, brand new vehicles on the road. If you go to Suva Nosori now, people talk to you about traffic jams. In the mornings, it takes about an hour to travel from Nasini to Suva. Sometimes even more, because there's so many cars on the road. This, of course, presents new issues for us, but that's something to talk about later. Next one, please. Retail sales. We look at the retail sales. You know how much people are spending in the shops. That obviously has continuously grown. Inflation. This is very important. We have a target of trying to keep our inflation low. In other words, the movement of prices. Some countries, the inflation is like 50%. Some countries are 1,000%. We have been very good. We've been trying to manage inflation. In particular, since 2014, we've tried to keep our inflation rate below 2%. It slightly went above 2%. You can see how it peaked here because of Cyclone Winston. Those of the farmers who are up in the valley, all the vegetable farms got damaged. So people still want to eat beans, but there's no beans, right? Bundle of beans. People want to still eat other crops, dalo, cassava, bananas. After Cyclone Winston in Suva, a small bunch of bananas cost $20. Beans were being sold at $5 a bundle because there's a shortage. Yamona till today is $110 a kilo in some parts in Fiji. People still drink it at the same amount, but that's another story. The fact of the matter though is inflation always increases after a cyclonic event because things get damaged. When things get damaged, the demand is there but the supply is not there. Those of you who study economics in school will know if the demand is high, the supply is less, the price of goods will go up. But you can see inflation coming down. I just bought a bunch of bananas the other day, actually 2 days ago in Suva, it cost me $5. The same bundle a few weeks after Cyclone Winston, late last year, was costing $20. It'll come down even further as more and more bananas come into the market. As more trees grow, the supply will increase, therefore the price will decrease. So we expect the price or the inflation to actually come down. We expect in the medium term to come down to at least 3%. Foreign reserves, a lot of people don't know about this. This is very, very important. This lady who I just pointed out, the pen, the camera and all of that, when we buy these things from overseas, for example, Tapu's or whatever shop that buys it, when they buy these things, if you're buying a camera from Japan, they don't sell it to you in Fijian dollars. They sell it to you in Japanese yen. When you buy something from Australia, it's in Australian dollars. When you buy something from USA, it's in US dollars. In fact, a lot of countries, even though they're not America, they will actually sell you a lot of goods in US dollars. So we as a country need to have enough foreign currency to be able to buy it. You're not going to take Fijian dollars. You need foreign currency to be able to buy it. So the international benchmark is, this dotted line here, that every country should, if they're healthy, should have at least 4 months worth of capacity to buy these foreign goods. You must have at least 4 months. Unfortunately, in 2005, we had only 2 months worth of foreign reserves. It was only we had only $549 million worth of foreign reserves. Today, we have $1.9 billion worth. So we are wealthier as far as that is concerned. So whenever an international bank looks at Fiji, a company that wants to come to Fiji to invest, they will look at the foreign reserves. How healthy is the country? Will it go bankrupt very soon? This is the thing that that determines whether you'll go bankrupt or not, and how quickly. So we are actually doing very well. We now have about 5.2 months worth of foreign reserves. So we're in a healthy state as far as the foreign reserves are concerned. Fiscal deficit, every government in Fiji, including many other governments around the world, they run what they call fiscal deficit. In other words, every year they spend more than what they collect. You spend more than what you collect. So right from the Alliance government days since independence, right up till now, except for 2 times in our history, have we had what we call a surplus budget. There's a surplus budget there. But we have a policy of keeping our deficits down. So the longer the line, the worse off you are. The shorter the line, the better off you are. If you go over that, it's great. Okay? But we have to also ensure that spending is not always bad all the time. It's good too, because I know some of you who live in the Kavananga south side of Singatoga Valley want Tahsil roads, you want better bridges. This school needs better buildings. So we have to spend the money to be able to improve the infrastructure. But we can also manage it. We're trying to run government like a business. We have to be mamangi about it. Certain things. We only spend money where it is necessary to spend money. It's like running a household budget. If your parents spend too much money on grog in Nangona, you're not going to have money to buy things like food. You won't have money to paint your house. You won't have money to buy your exercise books or your nice Sibo sandal that you want to buy. So it's all about balancing it and looking after your money well. You can see, if you go back to that, you can see our budget was going down, the deficit. It went up again. We had a cyclone here, and again it's gone up, 4.7. Why? Because this year we had to spend a lot of money. We are spending $132 million this year in just rebuilding schools. $132 million. If Cyclone Winston had not come along, this line here would have been much shorter, probably up till there. We're spending an additional $208 million just because of Cyclone Winston this year. A lot of bridges were damaged, a lot of roads were damaged, seawalls were washed away. We had to give money for rehabilitation of crops. All of those sorts of things cost money. Next slide, please. Okay, how much money are we making? If you look at government revenue, in 2004, the then government collected $1.1 billion in revenue. That's how much income they made through collection of taxes and various other things. Now, in 2000, In 16, 17, we are making $3.1 billion. World of difference. 2004, 1.1 billion, now 3.1 billion. Almost 3 times the amount. Because we are being smart about it, we are trying to ensure that we have new forms of collection of money. We have what we call progressive taxation system. So if you go and eat at an expensive restaurant in Denarau, you'll pay not just VAT, you'll pay a service turnover tax, you'll also pay environmental levy. But if you eat at some ordinary restaurant here in Singatoga, you'll only pay VAT. You don't pay service turnover tax, you don't pay environmental levy. If you go and stay at a hotel, you'll pay VAT, environmental levy, service turnover tax. If you go and stay at your relative's place, you don't pay anything. Okay? That's how it works. So we are able to take that money that we collect from people who eat at expensive outlets and use that money to fund other things. That's how we collect and collect revenue and spend it in the right places. You want to go and watch a movie at Village 6 or Village 4 or real life cinema in Nandi, you pay VAT, you pay service turnover tax, you pay environmental levy. Because obviously you can afford to pay for the ticket, you might as well pay a few more cents, and we use that money to be able to fund people who need that money. What are the things that helps us collect money? Revenue. Value-added tax contributes 30%. Direct taxes, which is corporate tax. Direct tax, PAYE, etc., that all comes in there. We are going very hard on this. There's still a lot of businesses that steal from the system. They don't declare the income well. There are a lot of businesses who are actually engaged in a lot of illegal activities. We are prosecuting them. We're actually going after them. That's how we're also increasing our revenue. Customs is also, like for example, if you buy a camera and that camera comes in, at the border you have to pay duty. We also collect money that way. If you buy a television set, you have to pay duty at the border. And in that way, we're able to gain revenue. There's still a lot of people who are, what I say, chorrowing from the system because, for example, they may bring in $10 million worth of goods, and at the border, the customs people, they'll say, oh, we brought in only $2 million worth, hoping that they'll pay duty only the $2 million. So that's how they're able to get away with it. So we really try to, I don't think I can come there because I think there's interference in the mic. We're trying to tighten the rules so they can actually pay the monies that are due to them. Service turnover tax, water resource tax, departure tax. Any tourist or anybody leaving Fiji, they pay $200. It's built into the ticket, and we collect that money to build roads and bridges, etc. Next slide, please. What we've done for you over here is we've collated the amount of money that we spend on infrastructure, health, education, access to justice, and social protection. These are what you call the social aspects of the budget. So, infrastructure, obviously, we're giving a lot of money for roads and bridges and jetties. We're also building it better. How many of you have been to Nandi recently? Anybody been to Nandi recently? No? You must get to Nandi. If you go to Nandi, you'll see we built a 4-lane road coming out of Nandi Airport. It goes towards Matintar, Namaka, and all of those places. If you've noticed one thing, the new roadway we built, there is no overhead electrical lines. There is no overhead TFL lines, Telecom Fiji lines. We put everything underground. It's taking a long to build it. Why? Because you see, there are two things to this. If you put the electrical lines and the telecom lines underground and on the side of the road, if there's a cyclone, there's nothing to fall down. Okay? In Cyclone Winston, 6,000 kilometers of electrical lines went down. 6,000 kilometers. If you go in particular to Mba, Tavua, Rakiraki, Tailevu, Bua, Tavini, all this place, 6,000 kilometers of lines went down. Now, God forbid, if all those lines are back up now, God forbid if you have another cyclone, go back down again. We build it again. Another cyclone, go back down again, build again. It costs money. It's like wasting money. But to put electrical cables under the ground is actually expensive. To do that, it costs us an additional $20 million. But we thought it's worth our while to do it because it's an important part of Fiji. People come, tourists, we depend on tourism. We have to ensure that there's no electricity does not get cut off. In Fiji also traditionally, when they used to build roads, you know the water pipes that you get water in your taps, they put the water pipes underneath the road. That's what they do. Many of the roads in Fiji till today is the water pipe underneath the road. So what happens? There's a water leakage. You don't know there's a water leakage. So the ground around the pipe gets soft, then all the cars are going on top of the road, and then you get nice big potholes. So what happens? Or if they discover the leakage, then you dig the road. You dig the road, you fix up the pipe, but don't fix up the road. That's what used to happen. So all of those roads there that we built, we've taken the water pipes from underneath the road and relocated it to the side of the road. So next time there's a water leakage, you dig up the footpath, you don't dig up the road. See, this is what you call building back better. This is what you call, a lot of people talk about climate change, they talk about resilience. This is what you call building resilience in your economy. But it costs money. We have to plan for the future. A lot of people say, oh, you're allocating lots of money. Yes, there's a reason for it. Because if we don't build back better now, then it'll cost you a lot more money. In Fiji, we've been very good in the past. You open new things, new building, everybody comes, we all clap. The chief guest gets the garland, the salu. We have a big party after that. You come back and see that building 4 years later. What does that building look like? The paint is peeling off, the window is cracked, nobody's fixed it up, the roof is leaking. So you have to have an annual maintenance program. Same way with your house. The same way with the roads in Fiji. Is to tahsil a road, but in order to make sure that the road is maintained to the same quality, you have to come back and reseal it. Because the biggest threat to any road is water. Even when it's tahsil, the water can still go through if the seal is not good. When you have trucks going on it, cars going on it, little by little the chips will come off. So you have to come back every 2-3 years and reseal it. That way you maintain your asset. The same way you maintain your assets at your house, we have to do that for public assets. In 2004, just go back there. In 2004, the government spent $1.3 billion in infrastructure, health, education, access to justice, social protection. Today, we are spending $3.6 billion. What is social protection? This is social welfare payments. People with disabilities, single mothers, abandoned children, people living below the poverty line. That's where the money goes. We have something like 24,000 recipients. Yes? 24,000. How much money are we giving in for social welfare? How much? $30 million for social welfare recipients. We also now started a pension scheme. There are a lot of people in Fiji who don't have FNPF. They've been living in the villages, they've been living as farmers, they never contributed FNPF. So a few years ago we said anybody over the age of 70, we'll give them from government side a pension. And we now give $50 a month, but we reduced the age to 66. So these are the kind of mechanisms we have to help people. Access to justice, legal aid. In 2006, legal aid only received $400,000. Today, legal aid, because it's in the Constitution, we give about in excess of $5 million. You have a legal aid office in Sigatoka. We have a legal aid office in every single town and even rural areas in Fiji, like Nambawalu, Taviuni, building one in Kandavu, Rotuma. Every single other place in Fiji has got legal aid. In fact, legal aid is what I call the largest law firm in Fiji. It's got more lawyers than any other law firm or any other institution. Education, of course, this is you people. We, of course, have made education free. You don't pay school fees anymore. You know, I've had so many times, so many people say to me, we wish when we were in school we had free education, because I would have completed high school. I was a very good student, I would have completed high school. Or I've had other people say to me, we wish in our time we had toppers or TELs. My father could not afford to send me to university, so after Form 6, in those days he had Form 6 or Form 7, he said I had to leave school, I had to start working. Even though I used to come first all the time in my class. A lot of people like that. So all of this money goes towards that. We spend $21 million a year in giving that amount of money to bus companies so you can get subsidized bus fares. There are some people in other parts of Fiji who had RSL, the minibuses, they carry them. In some parts of Fiji we pay for the punt, the boat in the outer islands, to take them to school also. That's where the money is going. Health, of course, is that we're trying to get more health centers and all of that. But the most important thing about health is, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough specialists in Fiji. It's a big problem. And that problem is that previously people actually have not been encouraged to do medicine. Or when people have done medicine, we have not encouraged them to become specialists. At the moment, if any one of us has a heart attack, probably us older people have a more higher chance of getting a heart attack than any one of you. There is nobody in Fiji that any Fijian doctor, there is no Fijian doctor that can carry out an open heart surgery. Cut you open, lift up your rib cage and play around with your heart. There's nobody who can do that. There's no Fijian doctor that can do that. And you don't have a cardiac surgeon just by doing MBBS. This lady here does MBBS, she can't cut me open just because she's a doctor. She has to have at least 10 to 15 years worth of experience and training before she can play with my heart. So previously, you have people doing medicine in Fiji, work for your Sigatoka hospital. The governments did not encourage further studies. The governments did not send them overseas. The governments did not think that we need people to carry out that surgery, that the Fijian people need access to those services. So today, we've changed the policy as announced in the budget last year. If you do an MBBS degree, and you get accepted by government to work in the public health system, if you want to do postgraduate studies, we let you do it for free. We pay for you to do it for free. So we've had a lot of people who've now been accepted as doctors. We said to them, you want to do FNU, specialist studies, we let you do it. So they work during the day, at night they go and study. But of course, it still takes time to create a specialist. So we are investing in you. You are the future. That's why we're having these consultations with you. So you are able to understand where you fit in the entire scheme of things. As I was telling some students yesterday, you know, everybody talks about what a great country Singapore is. You know, Singapore is the size of Taveuni. That's how small Singapore is. It's the size of Taveuni. Singapore was poorer than Fiji in the 1960s and the early 1970s. But their leaders had a vision. They set up a corruption commission in the 1960s. Their leaders decided to educate the Singaporeans. Those who were good, they sent them overseas, trained them, brought them back. The National University was just an ordinary university. Today, the Singapore National University is one of the most sought after universities in the world. It did not happen overnight, but everybody is very patriotic about their country. So you have to set yourself goals. And it's going to be asking you to think about that from that perspective. Today, like I said, it's not even heart surgeons. We don't even have a speech therapist in Fiji. You know, some kids, children, they may not be able to speak properly. If you are able to make the intervention at the right time, they'll be fine. But the parents don't have that level of access to those trained people. We don't have enough marine scientists. We don't have enough forest conservators. We don't have enough town planners, land surveyors. All of these are career paths for you. I know sometimes some parents, they tell they think that their son or daughter becomes a marine scientist, a forest conservator, it's like a low-grade job. It's not. It's a very important job. So we all have to think along those lines. If we're able to fill in those positions, that's why for toppers, we don't give any scholarships for people to become lawyers. We've got too many lawyers. But we don't have enough of those people that I identified just now. That's why we're investing in education. Next slide, please. Okay, this is very important, ladies and gentlemen. You see, when you spend the money, you have to ensure that you're spending money for the right reasons. So there are two types of expenditure. You have what you call your operational expenditure, which is here, this 83%, and you have your capital expenditure. I'll give you an example. If you decide, all of you decide after this, let's all go and have a party at McDonald's in Nandi, right? But you don't have the money. So you all go and decide to go to ANZ Bank or whatever bank and borrow money. And the bank gives you the loan to have your party tonight. When you have your party tonight, after you've eaten all the food and the drinks and whatever, when you wake up in the morning, the food is gone, the drinks are gone, but your debt is still there. Okay? So you should only borrow money to build something. So when the debt is gone or when the debt is there, you got something to show for it. Right, so if I go and borrow money from the bank and say, I've got a house, I want to build an additional bedroom. Or I want to buy a car. Or I want to build a new house. When the debt is there, you got something to show for it. When the debt is gone, you still got something to show for it. So that's what you call your capital expenditure. So for any good government, you should always try and spend a lot more money, a lot of money for capital expenditure because you're investing in the future. Operating expenditure for government is like the salaries for the civil servants, the salaries for other people who work, the ministers, the running of the motor vehicle, the buying of photocopying paper, the traveling expenses. They are what you call operational expenditures. Things you need to spend to operate. Capital expenditure are things that you are spending to build. In 2004, out of all the money that was spent by government then, 83% went into operating expenditure. 83%. And they spent out of the total money for that year, only 17% in building things, investment in assets. Today, we use 60% for operating expenditure, but 40% for capital expenditure. This is why you see a lot more things being built. And you'll see later on, as I'll show you, because we are collecting more revenue, we don't actually have to borrow money to borrow money to operate. We only borrow money to build things, which is a good position to be in. Next slide. Please ask me a question on this. This is by comparison. In 2004, PWD in those days, they only spent $55 million for roads, bridges and jetties. Today we're spending $527 million in roads, bridges and jetties. Next one please. Water and energy, same thing. $92 million 2004, today $337 million. As you know, a lot of places now we're extending the rural electrification grid. People before had to contribute 10%. You no longer have to contribute any money. And we're of course doing the free water scheme too. Funding for education, I mentioned that before. Again, you can see education received this year's budget $598 million. Over $500 million is going towards education. For those of you who may not know, also the teachers, your teachers' salaries come from government. So even though they may be working in a school that's run by a faith-based organization or a school committee, we pay for all the teachers' salaries also. And at the moment we're carrying out a review of the teachers' salaries to looking at improving that. Funding for health, again, I've spoken a bit about that. Again, the funding for health has increased to $244 million. Now, this is what I talked about. This is how much money we collect, operating revenue, all the way up to the blue line. This is how much we spend for operating expenditure. That's the savings we have, operating savings. We're being very stingy, but we run it well in order for us to be able to spend money in the right places. Government debt. This is very important. A lot of people talk about government debt without knowing what it is or how to measure it. Let me give you an example. If assuming that Fiji's total wealth was $100, what do you call gross domestic product, the total wealth value. Assuming it was $100, and then we went and borrowed $20. So we borrowed $20, but our total wealth is $100. What percentage of 100 is 20? Don't be shy. 20%. Okay? So $20 of 100 is 20%. So you say your debt to GDP ratio is 20%. In other words, your wealth is $100, but you borrowed $20, so 20% of what you make is what you borrowed. Assuming then Fiji becomes richer, and Fiji's total wealth is $500, and we go and borrow $50. What's 50 as a percentage of 500? Come on. 10%. Very good. 10%. So even though the amount of money you have borrowed has gone up from $20 to $50, as a percentage of your GDP, it's come down from 20% to 10%. That's what you need to be looking at. That's what you should look at when you want to measure what you call government debt. You can see over here, government debt has been coming down. That was our target. From 2010, we started to reduce government debt as a percentage of our GDP. But it's gone up here. Why? Cyclone Winston. I don't like Cyclone Winston. Cyclone Winston, if Cyclone Winston had not occurred, this line would have come down even lower. We would have saved $208 million, at least. So, even though the amount has gone up, but as a percentage of the GDP is coming down. The people need to understand that. If anybody talks to you about government debt, you need to say, what is the of your GDP? Not the actual nominal amount, not the actual amount itself. Because if your wealth is increasing, like the example that I gave, $50 or $500 is only 10%. But $20 of $100 is 20%. So in other words, even though you borrowed $20 and you're making $100, your debt burden is a lot higher, the $20 example, as opposed to the $50 scenario. Next one, please. Okay, this is the last slide. We come to essentially, I've just summarized to you, the economy is growing. We expect it to grow by 3.6%. Favorable prospects for medium term. Increased private sector investment, a lot of private sector interest. I know there's a couple of big warehouses about to come around in Suva, in Lautoka, Nandi, in Ba, even in Sigatoka. We are being very stringent about the way we control our money. We're very prudent about it. We are trying to spend our money in a smart manner. Whenever you run government, you have to be smart about how you spend money. You have to be smart about knowing what's going to happen in 4 or 5 years' time. I'll give you an example. You know, the tourism sector, Coral Coast, you get a lot of tourists. Majority of the tourists that come to Fiji, 51% of the tourists that come to Fiji come from Australia. About 16% come from New Zealand. So about 67 to 68% of total arrivals of tourists to Fiji come from only those two countries. That's not a good position to be in. Why? Because assuming that the economy of Australia and New Zealand does not do well, you know, they have some kind of crisis, they have economic downturn, far few people who travel from those countries will get affected really badly because we are dependent on those two countries. So as a government, we want to, what we call, mitigate our risk. We want, yes, more Australians and Kiwis to come, but as a percentage of our arrivals, we want them to have a lesser percentage contribution. We want more Indians, we want more Chinese, we want more North Americans, we want other Europeans, people from other countries. So if, for example, we spread the risk, so if you say, okay, 20% comes from Australia, 15 from New Zealand, maybe 23 from India, maybe 22 from China, and maybe another 20 from North America. So if Australian economy does not do well, it really won't affect our tourism industry, a little bit. That's what you call spreading your risk. It's like you have a household. If there are 7 adults and only one person works, and he gets sick or she gets sick, everybody will suffer. But if all 7 of you work, one of them gets sick, the others can carry the household. So that's what we are trying to do. This is why we're partnering with Fiji Airways. Fiji Airways, we're helping them to fly to Singapore. Why are we getting them to fly to Singapore? Because it opens up a new route. It's easier for the Indians to come. It's easier for other countries to come to Fiji, contribute towards our tourism sector. So these are the things that we are doing to ensure that the economy is in a stable position. The foreign reserves, as I mentioned, is comfortable. We of course are looking at various other sectors. They're having a broad-based economy, and inflation is about to come down. So, ladies and gentlemen, that in a nutshell is the presentation. I've done the talking, and now I want to hear from you. Please don't feel shy. Don't think any question is too hard or any question is too silly. You can make suggestions. I had some real interesting suggestions that were made. In Navua, somebody stood up and said, can you please make the MBBS course shorter from 5 years to 3 years so you can quickly become doctors? It's not about that. It's about the quality. And we've also had some interesting questions and queries regarding TELs and toppers. One issue that's come up, which we are going to look at quite closely, there are certain engineering courses that are available at FNU that you can go and do it without having to do year 13. You can go straight from year 12 and go and do those courses. But at the moment, if you do that, you don't get TELs or toppers. So that's something we are very closely looking at and seeing how we can change that. So those people who want to do those engineering courses don't actually have to do year 13. They can get accepted by FNU to do that. So let's open up the floor. There's somebody going around with a mic. Please feel free to make comments or questions or suggestions. Thank you very much.